Quinn Donnelly stared at the massive, ornate doors of the Vexlorian Imperial Palace and wondered how a physical therapist from Detroit had ended up in this mess. The polished purple metal reflected his disheveled appearance, rumpled diplomatic uniform, 5 o'clock shadow, and the permanent bags under his eyes that came from a decade of student loan debt and a recently failed private practice. "Remember," hissed Commander Patel from beside him, "smile, bow slightly, but not too much, and for God's sake, don't mention their third eyelid. They're sensitive about it." "Why am I here again?" Quinn muttered, tugging at his collar. "I'm a physical therapist, not a diplomat." "Because," Patel said with exaggerated patience, "after the incident, every qualified diplomat suddenly developed mysterious family emergencies. You're the only Earth representative with medical training who was desperate enough to accept the assignment." The incident, Quinn winced. 6 months ago, Earth's previous ambassador had accidentally referred to the Vexlorian Emperor's ceremonial head tentacles as cute little squid bits during a live broadcast. Diplomatic relations had been in the toilet ever since. "Great. So I'm Plan Z, more like Plan Q for Quinn," Patel said with a tight smile. "Look, all you have to do is not offend anyone for 6 months. The Vexlorians control 3/4 of the known universe's lithium deposits. We need this alliance." Before Quinn could respond, the enormous doors swung open with a hiss of hydraulics, revealing a cavernous throne room. Dozens of tall purple-skinned aliens turned to stare at him with their unsettling 4 eyes. At the center, on a floating throne that hummed with energy, sat Baron Dreldzar. Even seated, the Baron was nearly 8 feet tall. His ornate armor glittered with what Quinn suspected were actual crushed diamonds, and his head tentacles, 4 thick muscular appendages, were adorned with rings signifying military victories. Each of his 4 eyes focused on Quinn independently, giving the distinct impression he was being studied like a specimen. "Ah." The Baron's voice boomed through the chamber. "Earth sends me another diplomat. How quaint." His universal translator did nothing to mask the condescension in his voice. Quinn approached the throne and bowed slightly, not too much, just as Patel had instructed. "Baron Dreldzar, I bring greetings from Earth. I'm Quinn Donnelly, your new ambassador and liaison for—" "Yes, yes," the Baron waved a 4-fingered hand dismissively. "Another human to entertain me until you inevitably offend our customs and get yourself expelled. What is your expertise, Ambassador Donnelly? War strategy? Economics? Political theory?" Quinn cleared his throat. "Physical therapy and rehabilitation medicine, Your Excellency." The throne room fell silent and then erupted into what Quinn could only interpret as laughter, a wheezing, clicking sound that made his skin crawl. Baron Dreldzar's tentacles curled in amusement. "A body mender? Earth sends me a common body mender, as their representative. How deliciously insulting." Quinn fought the urge to point out that 8 years of education and $200,000 in student loans hardly made him common. Instead, he maintained his diplomatic smile. "I specialized in neurological rehabilitation and advanced prosthetic integration for—" "Spare me the details of your primitive medicine," the Baron interrupted. "On Vexlore, we simply replace defective parts, much more efficient than your— what do you call it? Physical therapy." He pronounced the words like they tasted bad. Quinn nodded stiffly, remembering Patel's warning, "Don't argue, don't educate, just agree." The Baron leaned forward, all 4 eyes now fixed on Quinn with alarming intensity. "Tell me, Ambassador Donnelly, do you enjoy challenges? Puzzles with no solution?" Something in the Baron's tone made Quinn's stomach tighten. "I appreciate a good challenge, Your Excellency." Baron Dreldzar's mouth stretched into what might have been a smile, revealing rows of sharp, metallic teeth. "Excellent. Then I have the perfect diplomatic assignment for you. A gift, even." He gestured to one of his attendants. "Bring in Lady Vexilla." The throne room doors opened again, and Quinn turned to see a sleek, hovering chair glide into the room. In it sat a young Vexlorian female, perhaps the equivalent of a human in her 20s. Unlike the other Vexlorians, whose posture was militaristically perfect, she sat slumped to one side, her head tentacles limp, and her 4 eyes focused on nothing in particular. She wore no armor, only a simple silver robe. "My daughter," the Baron announced, his voice dripping with barely concealed disdain. "Damaged since birth. Useless for war, marriage, or politics. The finest medical minds in the Empire found her unfixable." Quinn stared at the young Vexlorian, professional instincts immediately cataloging her symptoms. Partial paralysis, likely neurological in origin, possible cognitive involvement given the unfocused gaze. "Ambassador Donnelly," the Baron continued, his voice rising dramatically, "since you are a master of rehabilitation, I gift you my daughter as your personal project during your stay. Fix her with your primitive Earth methods, if you can." The Baron's laughter echoed through the chamber, joined by the clicking amusement of the court. It was a joke. Quinn was the punchline, and so was this poor woman. He looked from the Baron to the young Vexlorian, who hadn't reacted at all to being offered up as a diplomatic party favor. Quinn knew he should smile, bow, and accept graciously. That's what a diplomat would do. Instead, he looked Baron Dreldzar directly in all four eyes and said, "I accept your challenge, Your Excellency, and when I succeed, I expect a full renegotiation of the lithium trade agreement." The throne room fell silent. Commander Patel made a strangled noise behind him. Baron Dreldzar's tentacles twitched. For a moment, Quinn was certain he'd be executed on the spot. Then the Baron threw back his head and roared with laughter. "Ambitious for a body mender. Very well, human. If you manage to fix my daughter, which you won't, we'll discuss new terms. You have 6 months. Quinn bowed again, wondering what the hell he'd just gotten himself into. As he straightened, he caught the young Vexlorian's gaze. For just a moment, one of her eyes focused sharply on him, and he could have sworn he saw something flicker there. Intelligence, awareness, and something else, rage. Quinn's diplomatic quarters were surprisingly lavish. If you liked everything to look like the inside of an evil wizard's lair. Purple metal walls with jagged geometric patterns, furniture that hovered 6 inches off the floor, and lighting that seemed designed specifically to give humans migraines. So this is homey. Quinn muttered to himself as he explored the space. If you're a vampire with a contemporary art fetish. A sharp series of clicks from behind made him spin around. Lady Vexila sat in her hovering chair near the entrance. One of her attendants, a stout Vexlorian with military insignia, standing rigidly beside her. "Ambassador," the attendant said, his universal translator giving his voice a metallic quality. "I am Lieutenant Krex, assigned to assist with Lady Vexila's transfer to your care." "Transfer? Wait. She's staying here? With me?" Quinn blinked rapidly. "I thought this was going to be, I don't know, scheduled sessions or something." Lieutenant Krex's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. A gesture Quinn would later learn indicated extreme annoyance. Baron Dreldzar was most specific. "The Lady Vexila is now your responsibility, until you admit failure or your 6 months expire." Krex thrust a small metallic cube at Quinn. "Her medical file. Though I warn you, it will only confirm what our physicians have known for 20 cycles. Her condition is irreversible." Quinn took the cube, turning it over in his hands. "And how do I, access this?" "Press your thumb to the center panel," Krex instructed with the weary tone of someone explaining to a child why eating dirt is bad. Quinn did as instructed. The cube hummed, then projected a holographic display of Vexlorian text that meant absolutely nothing to him. "It's not translating," Quinn said. "Of course not. Medical information is too sensitive for translation algorithms," Krex replied. "You are expected to learn our language, Ambassador, in 6 months, while also rehabilitating a patient whose condition I don't understand, from a species I've barely studied." Krex's mouth formed what might have been a smile. The Baron enjoys setting impossible tasks. It amuses him when others fail. He turned to Lady Vexila. "Your father expects reports of your progress, or lack thereof." With that, Lieutenant Krex marched out, leaving Quinn alone with the silent Vexlorian woman. For a long moment, neither spoke. Quinn stared at Lady Vexila, and she stared, or at least pointed her face, vaguely in his direction. "So," Quinn finally said, awkwardly shifting his weight, "I'm Quinn, which you probably knew already. And you're Lady Vexila." No response. "I'm sorry about this situation. Being handed off as some kind of joke gift. That's pretty dehumanizing." He paused. "De-Vexlorianizing. Is that a word?" "Probably not." Still nothing. Quinn sighed and approached her chair cautiously. "Look, I know this is weird for both of us, but I really am a physical therapist, and I'm going to do my best to help you, regardless of why your father dumped you here." He crouched down to her eye level, all 4 of them, trying to establish a connection. At this proximity, he could see subtle details he'd missed before. Her purple skin had a slightly different tone than the other Vexlorians, more lavender than royal purple. Her head tentacles were smaller, almost delicate compared to the muscular appendages her father sported. And her eyes. 3 were unfocused, gazing in different directions, but one, the lower right, was fixed directly on him with laser intensity. "You can understand me, can't you?" Quinn whispered. Lady Vexila's mouth twitched. It wasn't much, but it was definitely a reaction. "Can you communicate at all?" Blink once for yes, twice for no. Her lower right eye closed deliberately once. "Holy shit," Quinn breathed. "You're completely aware in there, aren't you?" One blink. "But you can't control most of your body." One blink. "Has anyone ever tried to establish a communication system with you before?" 2 rapid blinks. Quinn ran a hand through his hair, mind racing with possibilities. They just assumed because you couldn't talk or move normally, that you were, what? Brain damaged? Mentally deficient? One emphatic blink. That's medical malpractice, on an interstellar scale, Quinn muttered. He stood up, pacing the room. Okay, first things first. We need a better way to communicate than yes-no questions. Let me think. He rummaged through his bags, finally extracting a tablet computer. This is old school, but it might work. It's what we used for non-verbal patients back on Earth. Quinn pulled up a communication app, and held it where Lady Vexilla could see it. If I hold this in front of your functioning eye, do you think you could focus enough to select letters or words? One blink. Great. Let's try. I'll calibrate it to track your eye movement. It took nearly an hour of frustrating attempts, but eventually, they worked out a system. Lady Vexilla could control her lower right eye with remarkable precision, and by tracking its movement across the tablet screen, she could select letters to form words. Her first message was brief, but to the point. Not joke gift, test. A test. Quinn frowned. Your father is testing me. No, testing you and me, both of us. Why? Lady Vexilla's eye moved rapidly across the screen, selecting letters with a speed that surprised Quinn. For failure. Wants to humiliate Earth, and discard me. That's incredibly messed up even for an alien despot, Quinn said, shaking his head. Why would he want to discard his own daughter? Shame. Weak offspring. Bad genetics. Quinn felt a surge of anger. That's bullshit. Just because you have a physical disability doesn't mean. Her eye selection cut him off. Not just physical. Worse crime. What could be worse than having a disability in this charming inclusive society? Quinn asked, not bothering to hide his sarcasm. Lady Vexilla's eye fixed on him with an intensity that made him shiver. Then she laboriously spelled out, I think for myself. Ah. Quinn nodded slowly. Yeah. I can see how that would be a problem for a guy who seems to run his empire like a megalomaniacal drill sergeant. For the first time, Lady Vexilla's mouth curved into what was unmistakably a smile. Small, lopsided, but definitely a smile. Quinn sat back on his heels, studying her. So if I'm understanding correctly, your father gave you to me expecting both of us to fail spectacularly, giving him an excuse to break ties with Earth, and, what? Ship you off somewhere. Execuine probably. Jesus, Quinn whispered. That's not happening. Not on my watch. He stood up, suddenly energized. We're going to prove him wrong. Both of us. Lady Vexilla's eye tracked his movement, and he could swear he saw a spark of something there. Hope, maybe. Or calculation. First things first, Quinn said, slipping into his therapist voice. I need to understand what we're working with. Can you tell me about your condition? What actually happened to you? Birth defect. Neural pathway degradation. Gets worse over time. Progressive neurological condition, Quinn translated. And Vexlorian medicine couldn't help. Couldn't. What do you mean? Resources for warriors only. Not worth fixing. Quinn's jaw tightened. Well, that's about to change. I may not know much about Vexlorian physiology yet, but I'm a quick study, and I've handled tough cases before. He paused, thinking. Also, I should probably call you something other than Lady Vexilla all the time. It's a bit formal for physical therapy sessions. Her eye darted across the screen. Just Vex. Vex, Quinn repeated, smiling. I like it. Simple to the point. And from what I've gathered about your father, I'm betting you live up to the name. Vex's lopsided smile returned, wider this time. So Vex, Quinn said, rubbing his hands together, ready to stick it to the Baron, and save interstellar diplomacy in the process. One very emphatic blink. Quinn quickly learned that physical therapy in space had its own special set of challenges. For one thing, Vexlorian anatomy was a nightmare. Their skeletal structure resembled a bizarre fusion of mammalian and cephalopod elements, with cartilage instead of bones in some places, and a nervous system that branched in ways that defied all logic. So let me get this straight, Quinn said, peering at the anatomical hologram he'd finally figured out how to access from the medical cube. You have 2 spinal columns and 3 hearts, but no kidneys. Vex blinked once for yes. And this cluster here, he pointed to a mass of neural tissue at the base of her head tentacles, is basically a second brain that controls fine motor movements. One blink. But yours is what's the technical term? Completely screwed up. Vex's eye darted to the tablet. Elegant diagnosis, doctor. Quinn snorted. I left my fancy medical terminology back on Earth along with my dignity and career prospects. He zoomed in on the hologram. The good news is, I don't think your condition is as hopeless as your father's doctors claimed. The neural pathways aren't destroyed, they're just degraded and misfiring. They knew that. And they still did nothing. Quinn shook his head. Charming bunch. 3 weeks into his assignment, Quinn had established a routine. Mornings were for language study. He was slowly picking up Vexlorian medical terminology with Vex as his reluctant tutor. Afternoons were for physical assessment and experimental therapy techniques. Evenings were for research and planning. And complaining. Evenings were definitely for complaining. I swear the food synthesizer is trying to poison me, Quinn groaned, poking at the gelatinous purple cube that was supposedly the Vexlorian equivalent of pasta. Everything tastes like batteries and licorice. Vex watched him from her hover chair, which Quinn had modified for better support. Her eye moved across the tablet screen. Equared taste. Yeah, so is cyanide, probably. He pushed the food away and leaned back in his floating chair, which he still hadn't mastered. The chair drifted sideways, sending him scrambling for balance. And don't get me started on the furniture. Would it kill your people to make something that just sits on the ground like normal? Gravity is for the weak. Speaking of which, Quinn said, straightening himself, I've been thinking about your hover chair. The technology is amazing, but it's doing all the work for you. Your muscles are atrophying because they're never engaged. Vex's eye narrowed slightly. I think we need to redesign it. Something that supports you but also encourages muscle activation. A hybrid between our technologies. Farther won't allow it. Your father gifted you to me. Remember? For 6 months my primitive Earth methods are the law of the land. Quinn grinned. Besides, what he doesn't know won't hurt him. Vex's response was swift. He knows everything. Maybe. But I'm betting he's not actually paying attention. Not yet anyway. Quinn pulled up his tablet and started sketching. Tell me about your life before you got stuck with a sarcastic human therapist. What did you do? What were you interested in? There was a long pause before Vex responded. Engineering. Engineering. Like building things. Designed weapons systems. Before condition worsened. Quinn's eyebrows shot up. You designed weapons? For your father's military. Until hands failed. Then became embarrassment. But you still know how to design things. Theoretically. One blink. Accompanied by what Quinn had come to recognize as Vex's equivalent of an eye roll, a slight circular motion of her functioning eye. Don't get sassy with me, Quinn said, but he was smiling. I'm thinking we could collaborate. You know Vexlorian technology. I know rehabilitation principles. Together we might be able to create something revolutionary. Like what? Like a neural interface that could bypass the damaged pathways. Or an exoskeleton that responds to the neural signals your body is sending but not receiving properly. Vex was silent for a long moment, her eye fixed on Quinn with an intensity that made him slightly uncomfortable. What? He finally asked. Tried that. Father said waste of resources. Well, your father isn't in charge of this project. I am. Quinn paused, considering. And technically you are too. So partner, what do you say we raid the Vexlorian engineering department and build you something awesome? For the first time since they'd met, Vex made a sound, a soft clicking that Quinn realized was laughter. Yes, please. Getting access to the engineering labs proved surprisingly easy. Quinn simply walked in like he owned the place, pushing Vex's hover chair ahead of him. Ambassador's priority project, he announced to the startled Vexlorian technicians. Baron's orders. It wasn't technically a lie. The Baron had ordered him to fix Vex after all. He just hadn't specified the methods. The lab was a wonderland of technology that made Earth's most advanced facilities look like a child's chemistry set. Holographic interfaces, molecular fabricators, neural scanners, all the tools they needed and more. Your father's not messing around with his military tech, Quinn whispered as they toured the facility. I designed half of this, Vex typed. No wonder he kept you around as long as he did. Quinn muttered. You're a genius. Was. Now just broken toy. Not broken, Quinn corrected firmly. Just operating with a different interface than most. Which is exactly what we're going to fix. Over the next few weeks, Quinn and Vex fell into a new routine. They'd work in the lab, pushing the boundaries of what was possible when you combined Vexlorian technology with Earth rehabilitation principles. Quinn had never seen anything like Vex's mind at work. Even limited to communicating through eye tracking, she could solve complex engineering problems in minutes that would have taken Earth's best teams months. You know, Quinn said one evening as they reviewed their progress, on Earth someone like you would be celebrated. Universities would be fighting to recruit you. Companies would be throwing money at you to design for them. Why didn't that happen to you? Quinn blinked, caught off guard by the personal question. What do you mean? You're smart. Innovative. Why failed practice? How do you know my practice failed? Your eyes when you mention it. Sadness. Quinn was silent for a moment. You're more perceptive than most humans with full function of all their facial features. He sighed. The practice failed because I cared more about results than insurance codes. I spent too much time with difficult cases, developed experimental protocols that weren't covered by medical plans. The business side tanked while I was focused on the patients. Not so different from me. I guess not, Quinn said, surprised by the observation. We both put the work before the politics. Too bad we're both pawns now. Maybe, Quinn agreed. But you know what happens to pawns in chess if they make it across the board. Vex's eye questioned him. They can become the most powerful piece in the game. Quinn grinned. And we're halfway across already. As they worked together, Quinn began to notice subtle changes in Vex. Her one functioning eye seemed brighter, more engaged. She held her head slightly straighter, and occasionally, one of her head tentacles would twitch in what seemed like a deliberate movement rather than a random spasm. You're getting better control, Quinn observed one day. The neural exercises are working. Small improvement. Not enough. Every marathon begins with a single step, Quinn said. Meaningless earth platitude. Hey, we're full of those. It's how we cope with being a species that's simultaneously capable of writing beautiful poetry and inventing the nuclear bomb. Vex's eye movement spelled out, liked earth poetry. Read before sickness. You've read earth poetry? Quinn asked, genuinely surprised. Which poets? Many. Dickinson, Neruda, Angelou. Wow. I wouldn't have pegged Baron Drill Sergeant as a poetry enthusiast. Hidden collection. Farther would destroy if found. Quinn shook his head. The more I learn about your relationship with him, the more I'm convinced your father is the actual worst. True, but he is powerful. Power doesn't excuse cruelty, Quinn said. Especially not to your own kid. Vex was quiet for a long moment before responding. Different cultures. Some things transcend cultural differences. Basic decency is one of them. Quinn sighed. Sorry, I shouldn't get on my soapbox. It's just, the more I get to know you, the angrier I get about how you've been treated. Why care so much? The question caught Quinn off guard. Because it's wrong. And because you deserve better. You're brilliant, Vex. And funny. In a dry, slightly terrifying alien way. You should be running this empire. Not hidden away because your body doesn't work the way your father thinks it should. Vex's eye fixed on him for a long moment. And Quinn had the uncomfortable feeling she was seeing right through him. Thank you. First person who saw me. Not condition. Yeah, well, Quinn mumbled, suddenly embarrassed. That's kind of my job. But they both knew it was more than that now. This is either going to work brilliantly or blow up the entire east wing of the palace, Quinn said, examining the contraption they'd constructed over the past month. I'm putting my money on the latter. Optimistic as always, Vex typed, her functioning eye somehow conveying sarcasm despite the limited facial expressions she could manage. The device they'd created looked like a cross between a high-tech spider and a medical exoskeleton. Delicate purple metal limbs attached to a central processing unit that would connect directly to Vex's neural pathways. In theory, it would amplify her neural signals, bypassing the damaged connections and allowing her to regain some movement. In practice, well, that's what they were about to find out. All right, Quinn said, running through his mental checklist. We've done all the simulations. The neural mapping looks solid. The response time is good. I think we're ready for a first test. Are you convincing me or yourself? Both? Look, I know it's risky, but we're running out of time. It's been 4 months, Vex. The Baron's going to want results soon. He expects failure. We'll be suspicious of success. Then we'll ease him into it. Show small improvements first. Nothing dramatic. Make him think his primitive earth medicine is making just enough progress to be interesting but not enough to be threatening. Vex's eye narrowed slightly, devious. Like Vex's Lorian. I'll take that as a compliment. Quinn carefully lifted the device, ready to try this on. One determined blink. It took nearly an hour to properly attach the exoskeleton. Each connection point had to be precisely aligned with Vex's neural clusters, and the calibration was delicate work. Finally, Quinn stepped back, wiping sweat from his forehead. Okay, the system is online but idle. When I activate it, start with something small, just try to move your right head tentacle. Vex's eye tracked him as he moved to the control panel. Quinn took a deep breath and pressed the activation sequence. For a moment nothing happened. Then Vex's right head tentacle twitched. Not the usual random spasm, but a deliberate controlled movement. Holy shit, Quinn whispered. It's working, try again. The tentacle moved again more smoothly this time, curling slightly at the tip. Quinn broke into a grin. You're doing it. Try your left hand now. Slowly, trembling with effort, Vex's left hand raised an inch off the armrest of her hover chair. Yes, Quinn pumped his fist in the air. This is amazing. How does it feel? Vex couldn't access the tablet while focusing on movement, but her eye clearly expressed a mix of shock and elation. Then everything went wrong. The exoskeleton began to hum, a high-pitched whine that rapidly increased in volume. Sparks flew from one of the neural connection points. Shit. Quinn lunged for the control panel. Something's overloading. Before he could shut it down, a surge of energy coursed through the device. Vex's body convulsed once, violently, then went completely still. The exoskeleton powered down with a sad little whimper of dying electronics. Quinn was at her side instantly, checking her vital signs. Her 3 hearts were still beating, but irregularly. Can you hear me? Blink if you can hear me. No response. Quinn's medical training kicked in. He stabilized her as best he could with his limited knowledge of Vex's Lorian physiology, then called for emergency help. Within minutes, Vex's Lorian medical staff swarmed the laboratory, pushing Quinn aside. What did you do? Lieutenant Krex had appeared, his 4 eyes blazing with accusation. The neural interface overloaded, Quinn explained, running his hands through his hair. We were making progress, real progress, and then, you exceeded your authority, Ambassador. Krex cut him off. Experimental devices were not part of your mandate. My mandate was to help her. That's exactly what I was trying to do. By nearly killing her. Krex gestured to the medical team now transferring Vex to a transport stretcher. The Baron will hear of this. Quinn felt his stomach drop. Is she going to be okay? Our doctors will determine that. You are confined to your quarters until the Baron decides your fate. 3 days passed with no word about Vex's condition. Quinn paced his quarters like a caged animal, alternating between worry for Vex and dread about his own future. Earth's diplomatic position was precarious enough without him causing an interstellar incident by accidentally electrocuting the Baron's daughter. On the 4th day, the doors to his quarters slid open. Quinn expected guards coming to escort him to his execution. Instead, Vex's hover chair glided in, with Vex herself seated in it, looking remarkably unharmed. Vex, Quinn rushed forward, then stopped himself, unsure if touching her was appropriate. Are you okay? They wouldn't tell me anything. I was so worried. She raised her right hand, raised it herself, without assistance, and pressed a finger to her lips in the universal sign for silence. Quinn froze. You can move. Vex smiled, a real balanced smile, not the lopsided grimace she'd managed before. She reached for the tablet on her lap and typed quickly. Partial neural reset. Accident-freed bad connections. Some function returned. The overload. It actually helped. Quinn couldn't believe it. That's incredible. But wait. Why are you here? I figured your father would have me locked up or executed. Doesn't know full story yet. Convinced doctors I needed to complete therapy regimen. You lied to protect me. I protected our work. We're not finished. Quinn sat down heavily on his floating couch, which drifted slightly under his weight. I nearly killed you, Vex. I think maybe we should quit while we're ahead. Vex's eyes, all 4 of them now partially under her control, narrowed in determination. She typed furiously. Not quitting. First progress in 20 cycles. Failure was engineering issue, not concept. What are you saying? We rebuild. Better, safer, Vex. I don't think. She cut him off by raising her hand again, more smoothly this time. She typed, I can design improvements now that I have some function. You handle physical therapy. Quinn studied her face, seeing the fierce determination there. You're not going to let this go, are you? Never. Freedom worth risk. He sighed. Fine. But we're going to be a lot more careful this time. Multiple fail-safes, lower power output, gradual increases. A thought struck him. Wait. How did you explain the improvement to the doctors? Told them your primitive method's surprisingly effective. They're confused and annoyed. Quinn laughed despite himself. I bet they are. He leaned forward. So what's the plan? Vex's eyes sparkled with mischief as she typed. We build version 2.0, and we make it combat ready. Combat ready. Why would we? Father plans military demonstration next month. Annual competition for new tech. And you want to enter. As what? A competitor. As winner. Quinn stared at her. You want to show up at your father's military parade in an exoskeletal combat suit that we cobbled together with stolen parts and questionable engineering. Exactly. That's insane. Vex typed 4 simple words, exactly why it works. The next few weeks were a blur of rehabilitation sessions, covert engineering, and near disasters. With Vex now able to contribute more directly to the building process, their progress accelerated dramatically. The new exoskeleton was sleeker, more elegant, and designed to be hidden beneath clothing, a crucial modification since they needed to keep their work secret. They implemented multiple safety protocols and fail-safes to prevent another overload. Meanwhile, Quinn put Vex through an intensive physical therapy regimen to strengthen the muscles that had atrophied from disuse. The combination of therapy and their neural interface device yielded results that even Quinn found hard to believe. Try the target simulation again, Quinn said, watching Vex actually stand, in the center of their makeshift training area. Vex nodded, her movements still slightly jerky but dramatically improved from 2 months ago. She activated the holographic training program they'd designed, and glowing targets appeared around the room. With a series of fluid movements, she directed the exoskeleton to hit each target in sequence. Her accuracy had improved to 87%, not perfect, but impressive considering she'd been completely paralyzed not long ago. Incredible, Quinn murmured as she completed the sequence. At this rate, you'll be ready for the competition next week. Vex deactivated the training program and carefully sat back in her hover chair. They decided she should continue to use it in public to maintain their cover. She reached for her tablet. Still not good enough to win. You don't have to win, Quinn reminded her. Just making an appearance will be shocking enough. Not enough. Must win to change things. Quinn understood her determination. The military competition wasn't just about showing her father she could move again. It was about proving her worth in the only currency the Baron valued, martial prowess. Then we need an edge, Quinn said thoughtfully. Something unexpected. The other competitors will have traditional Vex-Lorian weapons and tactics. We need to think differently. Earth combat techniques. Maybe. Or, Quinn snapped his fingers. What if we combine your engineering knowledge with my rehabilitation expertise, in a way no one would expect? How? You said Vex-Lorian warriors value strength above all else, right? They fight head-on, direct confrontation. One blink. Then we do the opposite. We use your condition, the very thing your father sees as weakness, as our strength. Your neural pathways work differently now. You can't move like a traditional warrior, but maybe that's an advantage. Vex's head tentacles curled slightly in confusion. Think about it, Quinn continued, excited now. For months we've been developing techniques to maximize efficiency with minimal neural input. You've learned to accomplish complex movements with a fraction of the neural signals a normal Vex-Lorian would use. Efficiency over power. Exactly. In a combat situation, that translates to precision over brute force. Targeted strikes rather than overwhelming attacks. Vex's eyes lit up with understanding. She typed rapidly, like Earth martial arts, using opponents' strength against them, precisely. We modify the exoskeleton to amplify that approach. Less power, more precision. Predictive algorithms instead of reactive ones. For the first time since Quinn had known her, Vex laughed out loud, a strange chittering sound that nonetheless conveyed pure joy. Father will be furious. I love it. Quinn grinned. That's the spirit. Now let's get to work. We've got 1 week to turn you into the most efficient fighting machine the Vex-Lorian Empire has ever seen. As they worked late into the night, Quinn couldn't help but reflect on how far they'd come. 5 months ago, Vex had been a gift tossed his way as a cruel joke. Now she was standing moving, designing complex systems, and planning to upend her father's entire worldview. And somewhere along the way, this strange, brilliant alien woman had become more than just a diplomatic assignment or a patient. She'd become his friend. Perhaps his best friend, if he was being honest with himself. The thought should have been weird, but somehow, it wasn't. Hey Vex, he said, as they were packing up for the night. When this is all over, what happens then? She looked at him, all 4 eyes now focused and alert. What do you mean? I mean after the competition. After we show your father what you can do. What comes next? Vex was quiet for a long moment before typing never thought that far. Never had future before. The simple honesty of the statement hit Quinn like a physical blow. Well, you have one now, and for what it's worth, I think it's going to be pretty incredible. The day of the Vexlorian military tech competition arrived with all the subtlety of a supernova. The entire palace was transformed, banners in the royal purple hung from every surface, hollow screens displayed past victories in excruciating detail, and the air practically vibrated with the sound of ceremonial war drums. Subtle, Quinn muttered as he helped Vex make final adjustments to their exoskeleton, hidden beneath her silver ceremonial robe. Your people really don't do anything halfway, do they? Efficiency in all things, Vex typed. Even excessive celebration. They were in a preparation chamber, adjacent to the massive arena where the competition would take place. Through the viewport, Quinn could see tiered seating filled with thousands of Vexlorians, all chattering excitedly. The Baron himself sat on an elevated platform, his throne somehow even more ostentatious than usual, adorned with what appeared to be actual meteorite fragments, and the skulls of something Quinn decided he didn't want to identify. You're sure about this? Quinn asked for the 100th time. Your father doesn't seem like the type to appreciate surprises, especially public ones. Irrelevant. Not doing this for him. Fair enough. Quinn stepped back, examining their work. The exoskeleton was practically invisible under Vex's robes, just as they'd planned. Remember the sequence we practiced. Start slow, reveal capabilities gradually. The element of surprise is our best advantage. Vex nodded, a motion much smoother than would have been possible just months ago. Even without the exoskeleton, her condition had improved dramatically thanks to their therapy regimen and the neural reset from the accident. A booming voice echoed through the chamber, an announcer introducing the competition. That's my cue to take my seat in the diplomatic section, Quinn said, suddenly reluctant to leave. Good luck out there. Remember, no matter what happens, what we've accomplished together is already a victory. Vex's head tentacles curled in what Quinn had come to recognize as affection. She typed quickly. No luck needed. Have science and spite. Quinn laughed. The two most powerful forces in the universe. He squeezed her shoulder gently. Show them what you're made of. From his seat in the diplomatic section, Quinn had an excellent view of the competition floor. 10 contestant zones were arranged in a circle, each containing a different warrior or engineer showcasing their latest technological innovation. The center of the arena featured various combat challenges, moving targets, obstacle courses, and even drone opponents programmed to test each competitor's creation. Lieutenant Krex, seated nearby as the Baron's aide, leaned toward Quinn. Quite impressive, isn't it? The pinnacle of Vexlorian military achievement. Very impressive, Quinn agreed, trying to keep his voice neutral. I'm looking forward to seeing the demonstrations. A pity Lady Vexilla couldn't attend, Krex said, his tone suggesting it was anything but a pity. These events used to be her passion before her unfortunate decline. Quinn bit back a retort. Yes, a real shame. The announcer's voice boomed again, introducing the first competitor, a hulking Vexlorian general showcasing a new battle armor that could apparently withstand direct plasma fire. The demonstration was suitably explosive, drawing appreciative clicks and whistles from the crowd. One by one, the competitors displayed their innovations. A neural-linked targeting system that increased accuracy by 40%. An invisibility cloak that lasted a full 5 minutes. A drone swarm that could disassemble and reassemble into different configurations on command. Quinn had to admit, it was all incredibly advanced. Earth's military would have a collective heart attack if they saw what the Vexlorians considered standard technology. Finally, the announcer reached the last scheduled competitor, General Vraxter, the Baron's most decorated warrior. He strode into his zone with the confidence of someone who had never known defeat, presenting a sonic weapon that could disrupt enemy communications and neurological functions simultaneously. The crowd roared their approval as Vraxter demonstrated the weapon by liquefying a solid metal target from 50 meters away. And that concludes our scheduled demonstrations, the announcer declared. Baron Drelxar will now evaluate the entries and declare a winner. This was the moment they'd been waiting for. Quinn held his breath as a hoverchair glided into the arena, Vex's hoverchair, but with Vex looking markedly different than anyone had seen her in years. She sat straighter, her head tentacles gently coiled rather than hanging limply, and all 4 of her eyes were alert and focused. A murmur of confusion rippled through the crowd. On his elevated platform, Baron Drelxar half rose from his throne, his head tentacles rigid with shock. What is the meaning of this interruption? The Baron demanded, his voice echoing across the arena. Vex activated a voice synthesizer they'd built into the chair. Father, I wish to enter the competition." The crowd's murmur turned to outright exclamations of disbelief. The Baron's 4 eyes bulged with a mixture of rage and embarrassment. "This is absurd. Remove her immediately," he commanded. Quinn tensed, ready to intervene somehow, but Vex was prepared for this reaction. She activated the second phase of their plan, a pre-recorded message that played over the arena's announcement system. By the ancient laws of Vex lore, any citizen who presents a military has the right to demonstrate it before the Baron, the message stated, reciting the exact legal code. To deny this right is to dishonor the warrior tradition. It was a brilliant move. Quinn and Vex had discovered this obscure law buried in the Vexlorian legal archives. The Baron couldn't refuse without publicly violating his own culture's sacred traditions, something that would damage his standing far more than allowing his broken daughter to make a fool of herself. The Baron's head tentacles writhed with fury, but he sank back onto his throne. "Very well, let Lady Vexilla demonstrate whatever of innovation she believes she has created. The law will be respected." The crowd fell silent as Vex guided her hoverchair to the center of the arena. Quinn could feel the collective assumption. They all expected some pathetic attempt, a moment of pity and embarrassment before the real winner would be announced. They had no idea what was coming. Vex positioned herself before a set of combat drones, the most difficult challenge in the arena, reserved for the most elite warriors. Without any flourish or introduction, she simply stood up. The gasp from the crowd was audible. Baron Drelxar leaned forward, his 4 eyes narrowed in disbelief. Then Vex removed her ceremonial robe, revealing the sleek exoskeleton beneath. It wasn't bulky like traditional Vexlorian battle armor, it was streamlined, elegant, conforming perfectly to her body. The purple metal gleamed under the arena lights, neural connection points pulsing with soft blue energy. "My innovation," Vex announced through the synthesizer, "is a neural-enhanced combat exoskeleton designed for warriors who have sustained neurological damage. It doesn't merely compensate for limitations, it transforms them into strategic advantages." With that, she activated the combat sequence. The drones surged forward, weapons hot. Vex moved with a grace that seemed impossible for someone who had been paralyzed for most of her life. The exoskeleton anticipated her intentions, amplifying her limited neural signals into fluid, powerful movements. Where the previous competitors had showcased brute force and overwhelming firepower, Vex demonstrated precision and efficiency. She disabled the first drone with a targeted strike to its sensor array. The second, she redirected into the path of the third, causing them to collide and crash. 2 more drones attacked from opposite directions. Instead of trying to engage both, Vex calculated their trajectory and moved at the last possible moment, causing them to crash into each other. The crowd's silence had transformed into awestruck murmurs. Even Lieutenant Krex was leaning forward, his professional demeanor forgotten in the face of such an unexpected display. For the finale, Vex faced the command drone, larger, more heavily armored, and programmed with advanced combat AI. This was where their Earth-Vexlorian hybrid approach would truly be tested. The drone launched a barrage of sonic pulses, the same technology General Vraxter had just demonstrated. But instead of trying to block or absorb the attack, Vex's exoskeleton analyzed the frequency and generated a counterpulse, creating destructive interference that neutralized the sonic weapon entirely. While the drone's systems attempted to recalibrate, Vex executed a series of movements unlike anything the Vexlorians had seen before. A fluid combination of Earth martial arts and Vexlorian combat techniques that Quinn had helped her develop. She didn't attack the drone's weapons or armor, as a traditional warrior would. Instead, she targeted its balance systems and sensor arrays, exploiting vulnerabilities that bigger, stronger opponents would never consider. With a final precisely calculated strike, she disabled the command drone completely. It hovered for a moment, systems failing, then crashed to the arena floor. The entire demonstration had taken less than 3 minutes. For a moment, the arena was completely silent. Then, from somewhere in the crowd, a single Vexlorian began the rhythmic clicking that Quinn had learned was their version of applause. It was joined by another, then dozens more, until the entire arena resonated with the sound. Vex stood in the center of it all, her exoskeleton glinting under the lights, 4 eyes lifted toward her father's platform. Baron Drelxar remained frozen, his expression unreadable from this distance. Finally he rose from his throne, and the clicking applause immediately ceased. "Lady Vexilla," the Baron's voice boomed across the arena, approach the royal platform. Quinn tensed, unsure what would happen next. This wasn't part of their plan. Vex hesitated only briefly before guiding her exoskeleton toward her father's elevated position. She moved with deliberate confidence, each step a testament to what they'd accomplished together. As she ascended the platform to stand before her father, Quinn held his breath. The Baron could still react with rage, could still punish her for this public display, could still frame this as a violation rather than a triumph. Baron Drelxar towered over his daughter, his 4 eyes studying her with an intensity that made Quinn deeply uncomfortable. Then, to everyone's shock, including, Quinn suspected, Vex's, the Baron raised his hand in the traditional Vex-Lorian warrior's salute. Innovation, the Baron announced, his voice carrying throughout the arena, is the lifeblood of Vex-Lorian military dominance. Today, we have witnessed innovation of the highest order, not merely in technology, but in strategic thinking. He turned to address the crowd. Where there was weakness, Lady Vexilla has crafted strength. Where there was limitation, she has discovered opportunity. This is the essence of Vex-Lorian warrior philosophy. The crowd erupted in clicking applause once more, louder than before. Quinn couldn't believe what he was hearing. The Baron was praising her? The winner of this cycle's military tech competition, the Baron declared, is Lady Vexilla. As the crowd's approval reached deafening levels, Quinn caught Vex's eye across the distance. She gave him the slightest nod, acknowledgement, gratitude, triumph all contained in that small gesture. They had done it. Against all odds, they had done it. But as Quinn watched the Baron place a ceremonial medal around Vex's neck, he couldn't shake the feeling that this victory might be more complicated than it appeared. The Baron didn't strike him as someone who accepted being outplayed so graciously. Whatever came next, Quinn suspected it wouldn't be as straightforward as this moment of glory. 3 weeks after Vex's triumph in the arena, Quinn found himself back in the throne room where his strange journey had begun. This time, however, he wasn't a nervous diplomat awaiting judgment. He stood confidently beside Vex, who remained in her exoskeleton rather than her hover chair. Ambassador Donnelly, Baron Drelxar rumbled, his 4 eyes fixed on Quinn with what might have been respect. You have accomplished what I believed impossible, Your Excellency, Quinn replied evenly. It wasn't me who accomplished it. It was Vex. Indeed. The Baron's head tentacles curled thoughtfully. My daughter has proven herself resourceful, more so than I anticipated. Vex stood straight and proud beside Quinn. Since the competition, her status in Vex-Lorian society had undergone a dramatic transformation. No longer hidden away as an embarrassment, she had become something of a celebrity. The warrior who overcame biological limitation through ingenuity. Her exoskeleton design was already being adapted for injured Vex-Lorian soldiers, with Vex herself overseeing the modifications. As promised, the Baron continued, we will renegotiate the lithium trade agreement. Earth's persistence has earned this concession. Actually, Quinn said, I have a counter-proposal. He glanced at Vex, who nodded encouragingly. Instead of simply adjusting trade terms, I propose a joint research initiative between Earth and Vex-Lore focused on medical technology and rehabilitation engineering. With Lady Vexilla as the Vex-Lorian director, the Baron's eyes narrowed slightly. You wish to create a permanent position for my daughter. I wish to capitalize on the unique insights she offers, Quinn corrected. Her understanding of both Vex-Lorian technology and rehabilitation principles could revolutionize treatment for both our species. The throne room fell silent as the Baron considered this. Quinn knew they were asking for something unprecedented, an official, ongoing collaboration rather than a mere trade adjustment. And what would Earth provide for this initiative? The Baron finally asked. Our perspective, Quinn replied simply. As Vex has shown, sometimes limitations can be transformed into advantages when viewed differently. Our species approaches problems from fundamentally different angles. Together we might solve challenges neither could address alone. The Baron's head tentacles undulated slowly, a sign of deep thought, Quinn had learned. After what seemed like an eternity, he inclined his head. Approved. Lady Vexilla will direct this initiative from Vex-Lore. You, Ambassador Donnelly, will serve as Earth's representative. Quinn blinked in surprise. Me. But my assignment was temporary. Consider it permanent, the Baron interrupted. Unless you wish to return to your failed practice. Quinn glanced at Vex, who was watching him intently. 6 months ago, he'd been a broke physical therapist with no prospects. Now he was being offered a position at the forefront of interstellar medical research, working alongside the most brilliant mind he'd ever encountered. I accept, Your Excellency. Excellent. The Baron rose from his throne. The details will be formalized at tomorrow's council meeting. You are dismissed. As they left the throne room, Vex activated her voice synthesizer. You're staying. It wasn't a question, but Quinn answered anyway. Looks like it. Though I'll need to requisition better quarters. That floating furniture is a health hazard. We could design you an exoskeleton, Vex suggested, her synthesized voice somehow conveying her dry humor. Hard pass. One of us in a supersuit is enough. They paused at a viewport overlooking the capital city, its purple spires gleaming in the alien sunlight. Vex turned to him, her 4 eyes now fully expressive. My father didn't give me to you as a joke, she said quietly. He gave me to you as a test, for both of us. What do you mean? He suspected I had potential, but Vexlorian medicine had failed me. You were his experiment, a different approach, with nothing to lose. Quinn shook his head, laughing softly. So this whole time while we thought we were outsmarting him, he was evaluating us, Vex confirmed. Though I don't think he anticipated quite how successful we'd be. Devious old squid, Quinn muttered. So what now? We just revolutionize interspecies medicine. Vex's head tentacles curled in amusement. Among other things, I have plans for improving the exoskeleton, perhaps making a combat version for the military, as my father obviously wants, and a medical version for patients like you used to be, Quinn added. Like I still am, Vex corrected. The exoskeleton doesn't cure me, it adapts to me. There's a difference, one that took an earth body mender to help us see. Quinn smiled. Not bad for a primitive medicine man. Not bad at all, Vex agreed, her synthesized voice somehow warmer than before. Though your taste in furniture remains questionable. As they continued down the corridor, Quinn reflected on the strange journey that had brought him here. 6 months ago, he'd been given a broken alien as a diplomatic joke. Now they were partners at the forefront of a new field, bridging the gap between two species. And somewhere along the way, he'd found something he'd never expected in this distant purple empire. A friend, a purpose, and maybe, just maybe, a place where his particular brand of stubborn optimism could actually make a difference. Not bad for a washed-up physical therapist from Detroit. Not bad at all.